The dust stood over the town like a gray curtain between heaven and earth. The sun was shining directly into my eyes, making it impossible to see beyond my outstretched arm. The bell from the church rang dully, as if tired of life, and somewhere in the backyard chains creaked, slowly, rhythmically, like the breathing of an animal. The cowboy stood at the hitching post, leaning wearily on the saddle. His name was Reeves, a man who had long since stopped believing in goodness, but still wasn't used to shooting himself in the back. He saw a lot of things: burning farms, dead rangers, Indians chained to poles for $2. But what was happening at the city auction today made even his teeth clench. The crowd roared. 2 Apache girls were led onto a wooden podium, their skin the color of copper, their hair matted, their eyes dark and full of something that no one could call fear. The host shouted the price. $10. 15. Who will give you 20? The men laughed, talked, and threw coins in the dust. Clay stood in the shadows, clutching a cigar between his fingers. Something old stirred in his chest, the memory of a woman who had once been dragged out of exactly the same cage, and then killed for not being able to keep quiet. 50, he said softly. The crowd fell silent. Someone chuckled. Why are you suddenly spending money on beauties, Clay? The sheriff snapped at him. I'm buying freedom, Clay replied, and tossed a bag of gold. It was over in half an hour. He led them out of the city, avoiding the gazes, and only when the sun disappeared behind the hill did he stop by the river. The sisters stood in silence. The older one has a cold look. The younger one is as wary as a she-wolf. He cut their ropes and nodded towards the desert. You're free to go. The older one looked him straight in the eye. We're yours now, she said softly, but with such confidence, as if this was not a decision, but a verdict. Clay exhaled through his teeth. No, I'm not holding anyone. You bought us, the younger one replied. So now there's blood on your hands. He didn't understand what she meant, but somewhere in the distance, in the darkness, the coyotes were already calling to each other, and the sound of their voices sounded like a warning. A night on the prairie is not peace, but waiting. The wind whispers between the rocks, the grass rustles, and even the stars seem to be watching every move. Clay sat by the campfire, watching the flames reflected in the revolver. There is an old engraving on the handle, for honor. Once upon a time, that word meant something. He pulled out his canteen and took a sip of whiskey. The eldest, whose name was Anavi, came closer. Why did you release us? Because it was sickening to watch. Nausea is not a reason to risk your life. He said nothing. Her gaze was hard, unforgiving. People of your color took our house, she said. Now you bought us to get your conscience back? Clay chuckled bitterly. I lost my conscience before the war. She sat down opposite him. Then why do you live? He didn't answer. The flames swayed, as if the fire also wanted to hear the answer. And at that moment, a shot rang out somewhere in the distance. In the morning they found footprints, 3 horses, fresh hooves, and blood on the sand. There was a man lying on the road with a bullet through his chest, an arms dealer. Saddlebags has boxes of cartridges and a letter stamped, White Creek. Clay frowned. It's a 3-day journey from here. A city on the border. Anavi nodded. The man who sold us lives there. His name is Barlow. The name sounded like a slap in the face. Clay knew Barlow. They used to drive cattle together. Then Barlow went into the slave trade. He was the one who sold everything he could, even his honor. Clay thought about it. He could go his own way, forget everything he saw. But the words of the elder sister rattled in my head. You bought us, so now there's blood on your hands. The road to White Creek went through the dead land. Dry cacti, animal bones, bullet marks on the rocks. Clay rode in front, the sisters behind him, in silence. Sometimes the younger one, Thea, would whisper something in her own language, like a prayer. Anavi just stared ahead, as if she knew there was no end to this path. On the third night, they stopped at an old ranch. Clay found a well there, pulled out a bucket of water. "We'll spend the night here." Anavi asked, "Are you going to kill him?" "No, I'm going to talk." "And if he doesn't want to listen?" Clay looked at the revolver. "Then the iron will speak." She nodded, as if that was exactly what she'd been waiting for. While the sisters were sleeping, he sat by the campfire and thought. Everything he did, saving, shooting, leaving, returning, was just an attempt to prove that a person can choose who to be. But now he realized that sometimes fate doesn't ask. She just gives you a chance to get your hands dirty and sees what you do next. Maybe freedom is not something you take, but something you let go of. The thought came suddenly, like a soft whisper of the wind. He didn't know that they had already been followed. It was a quiet morning, too quiet. The birds were not singing. The air stood still, as before a storm. As Clay approached the well, he noticed dust on the horizon. 5 horsemen. Barlow sent hunters to return the goods. Clay had already saddled his horse. "Let's go?" The bullets whistled after a minute. Clay fired twice. One fell, the other spun in the saddle. Anavi grabbed a Winchester, shot accurately, without fear. The younger one was covering them from the cliff. When all was quiet, 2 riders were lying in the dust. One was running away. Clay lifted his hat and wiped his sweat. "Now they know where we're going." "Let them know," Anavi replied. "We're going after them too." On the border with White Creek, the air smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Clay recalled the days when this city was just a transit station. Now it's a nest of corrupt souls. The streets are empty, the windows are closed. Only the music from the saloon pours like poison, insinuating and deceitful. He dismounted at the entrance. "Stay here," he told the sisters. "If I'm not here in an hour, leave." "We're not leaving," Anavi said. He stepped inside. Laughter, smoke, the smell of cheap whiskey. At the table in the corner is Barlow, fat, smug, with gold teeth. When Clay approached, he didn't even look up. "I hear you're playing the hero again, Reeves. Did you buy yourself a pair of Savages?" Clay put the revolver on the table. "I didn't come here to play." "Then what? Forgive? To preach? To take what you had no right to sell?" Barlow laughed. "Everything in this world is for sale, Clay. Even you." Clay looked at him as if he were a man who was already dead. "Not all of them." Then Barlow pulled out a gun. The shots sounded like thunder. Barlow fell, blood spreading across the boards. Silence. All eyes turned to Clay. He stood panting, holding the revolver as if it weighed a lifetime. The sheriff's voice boomed from outside. "Clay Reeves, you're under arrest." He slowly went outside. Dust swirled in the air, and the sun beat directly into my eyes. The sisters stood by the horses, ready to flee. The sheriff was holding a shotgun. "Drop the gun, Clay," he said. "Don't do anything stupid." Clay chuckled. "I've already done them." He glanced at Anavi. There was something between them that words cannot explain, the understanding that there is only one way now, and there is no turning back. He fired first. The shot split the silence like thunder in the desert. Bullets hit the walls, glass rained down on the dusty road, and the air was instantly filled with smoke and screams. Clay covered the sisters, fired back, briefly, accurately. The sheriff fell before he could finish his sentence. The crowd scattered. The sun was blinding. The dust burned their eyes. The horses neighed, feeling the blood. Clay jumped into the saddle, jerked Teo up, and Anavi was already there. They shot west, to where the horizon was melting from the heat. There were screams, the whistle of bullets, and the barking of a chase. Clay didn't turn around. He knew that if he turned around, he would die. All they had left was the wind in their face and 3 bullets in the drum. At sunset, they took refuge in an old mining settlement. Destroyed houses, a rusty trolley, a well without water. Clay dismounted and took a deep breath. They'll be looking for us, Anavi said. I know. You had a chance to leave. Why did you stay? Clay chuckled. Because I'm tired of running away. Thea stood next to him, staring at the ground. They won't forgive. No one forgives anyone, Clay replied. Neither here nor there. He sat down on the steps and pulled out his revolver. The engraving on the hilt flashed again in the sunset glow. For honor. Clay ran his finger over the letters, as if he wanted to erase them. Internal monologue. Honor. A stupid word for stupid people. I saw how those who swore by her died in the mud, and those who spat on her became rich. But maybe honor is not what others see. Maybe it's just your way of not going crazy when everything is rotting around. He looked at the horizon. The wind carried the scent of a thunderstorm. Somewhere out there, beyond the hills, the pursuit was already moving. It started raining at night. It was rare and cold, as if the sky itself didn't know why it was crying. The sisters sat by the fire, Clay silently cleaning his weapons. Anavi said, in the north, they believe that every bullet has a name. Yours is on its way to you, Clay Reeves. He looked up. Maybe. But if she's flying, let her know why. Thea looked at him. And if freedom is not for you, then at least others will know what she looks like. He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. The rain was pounding on the roof like a clock counting down the last minutes until dawn. When morning came, he was greeted by bullets. Barlow was alive. The bullet had passed by casually, and now he was chasing a dozen people, mercenaries, desperate, angry. The mining settlement became a trap. Clay realized this the second the bullet pierced the board next to Taya's face. Get in the saddle. Stop it, he shouted. They dashed through the rain, along a rocky path. Barlow chased, shooting nonstop. Bullets hit the rocks, ricocheted, screamed, as if hell itself was calling them by their names. Clay fired as he walked. He took off one, wounded the other. But there were too many of them. When the road led to the canyon, there was no choice left. There is an abyss in front of them and death behind them. Anavi looked down. There's a stream there. If we jump. Clay chuckled. If we don't crash. Barlow was shouting from behind. Give up, Reeves. Leave the girls alone. Maybe I'll let them go alive. Clay looked at the sisters. Hold on. And jumped. The water hit like a stone. He surfaced, gasping for air. The sisters also came out, unharmed, but beaten. The current carried them down, past rocks and tree fragments, until they finally washed up on the shore. Clay lay coughing, blood mixing with the rainwater. He looked up and saw his revolver lying next to him, the one with the engraving. He took it and looked at it. The letters were worn out by time, but they were still legible. Anavi came over and sat down next to him. Why did you do that? Because if I hadn't jumped, we would have been killed. No, she said. I'm talking about why you intervened at the auction that day in the first place. Clay looked at her. Because I remembered what it was like to be sold. She didn't answer. She just said softly, then know this, you're part of our blood now. And blood has a price. In the evening, they reached the old outpost, abandoned during the war. Dry barrels, a leaning tower, charred beams. There they found some gunpowder, ammunition, and food. Clay knew Barlow wouldn't let up. He will come at night, and then it's all over. He sat by the fire and watched the embers slowly go out. The wind whispered through the cracks in the walls. And somewhere in that whisper, there was a question addressed not to him, but to everyone who had ever shot for justice. And if the truth is on your side, why are you still hiding? Night. It started raining again. Barlow came like a shadow with 6 people. Clay heard their footsteps before the shots. He got up and loaded the last clip. He nodded to the sisters. Leave through the basement. Go out to the river. And you? Thea asked. I'll stay. I have something to finish. Anavi wanted to protest, but he had already turned away. Barlow entered the gate, revolver in hand. Well, here we are, Clay. It's too late to talk. It's never too late to earn some more gold. Clay raised his weapon. Lightning flashed. The gunshots merged into one sound. Dust. Blood. Screams. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Clay moved as if the wind itself was guiding him. Every shot is a step towards the ultimate truth. The bullets were gone, and all that remained were his breathing and the pounding of his heart. Barlow stood opposite, wounded but alive. He raised the gun, grinning. You know, Clay, the world is not divided into good and bad. There are those who survive, and those who die beautifully. Clay exhaled. Then I choose beautifully. He stepped forward. Shot. Barlow fell. Silence. The morning was clear, for the first time in many days. The sun was rising over the desert, and everything seemed new. Even the dust shone like gold. Clay was sitting by the ruins, wounded, pale, but alive. The sisters are back. Anavi came over and handed him an old hat. His hat, crumpled and covered in dust. She was waiting for you. He smiled faintly. It looks like I don't belong to anyone anymore. You're wrong, she said. You belong to the path now. He looked at the horizon, where the wind was blowing up the sand. Somewhere there, a new road began. He put on his hat, got up slowly, and walked forward without looking back. There was only a trace behind him, a thin line in the sand that would disappear with the first gust of wind. And then, as if from afar, a quiet voice sounded, either his own, or his conscience, or the West itself was talking to him. Freedom is not given. It is paid in blood. The only question is, did you pay enough?